Today I'm drawing Guts from Berserk. Guts is one of the most iconic manga protagonists ever created, and his intense expressions make him a lot of fun to draw. Um, Before I continue, and not to segue too much, and I'm not when I do these segues, I don't want to break away from like the topic too much, so I might have to branch out into that and then branch back into like read following the script. I did say in one of the shorts that I was going to talk about his exact personality and why that could show up in his expression and how his is actually very straightforward. Um, it's very straightforward because like what happens is he's already been through maybe certain things and he actually has like a specific type of personality that he was probably born with, and then it just got sharpened to the point where the current setting of the story is right. I don't remember way too much of his backstory. I don't remember way too much of what happened in the earlier episodes. But from what I do know is he's basically, if I was to say specifically, let's say there's representations in anime. Like, let's say that, for example, Goku might not be the top representation, but he is definitely a representation of like the goofy person who's playful and fun loving, but they actually enjoy bettering themselves and improving themselves and seeking challenge. Like that's, I think Goku could be a top nomination for that specific archetype, right? Vegeta is like a definitely a top archetype for being very competitive and wanting to gain power over, and he's doing it from a competitive angle. It's not even really because it's just he wants power. Like Goku just genuinely wants power and he enjoys the process and he sees it as a positive thing. But for Vegeta, it's actually coming from a negative place, right? What are some other archetypes like uh like Naruto is kind of like Goku, for example, but different stories. Sasuke is kind of like Vegeta, but his is coming from a place of vengeance where he had something happen to him and then he's trying to get revenge, right? Um, and I've discussed other different types of archetypes and I've explained some of these shows. I said Luffy is very similar to Goku. Luffy is probably a bigger example than Goku, but only because I think One Piece is way more viral. Most people, if people knew both Luffy and Goku, they'd say Goku is more known for that. But I think people wouldn't know that about Luffy unless they watched the show. Like I had to watch the show to know Luffy's personality because his personality doesn't show too much unless you hear him talk and you see his mannerisms and you see how he acts. Right now, Guts, for example, when I'm talking about his personality, he's like the poster boy for the intense, go hard, go hard or go home type of personality, right? And what place is he coming from when he's doing it? So from what I can remember in the show, he, I forget, like I said, I forget his younger years. I remember in the early episodes because I watched actually the show, not the 3D version. Younger episodes, he's a kid. He gets trained and recruited into. This is in medieval times. He gets recruited as a soldier to fight in battles, and in this world, and who's to say if it was based on a current time frame in medieval times, I can't remember that, but let's say that there was a point in time that the place that he lived in on earth was in constant battles, so there was constant battles going on for specific reasons. Maybe kingdoms were trying to overtake each other, so a king sending out parts of his army or his entire army to go to battle with other armies. And so he grows up in a village. He gets recruited into a local uh, soldier force. But I think it was more as like a, was he a mercenary first or was he an actual soldier? And I think like, but what happens is he was genetically gifted as being very big and strong, so he could actually wield a sword that's very very heavy and large. Um, and because it's so heavy and large, it can easily, you know, he's like a tanker type of medieval soldier. So like for example, I remember a scene where one of his he was with his soldiers and they were up against like some other soldiers in a battle, and I think they were winning or something like that, and then the other army who they were up against, they sent in this big dude who's probably over 300 pounds, has like padded metal plates all over him protecting him, and he would swing like a spike ball, and he was killing tons of people in Guts' army with that. But Guts being another the tank from his army, he has a sword that probably weighs over 200 pounds, so it's just like one swipe of the sword, and he probably, I think he didn't cut the dude in half, but it didn't take a much effort to take that dude out. But like, so it's like, like there's different parts of the army. There's like the people who go in first. There's probably archers. There's not I can't really remember, but like what happens is there's tanks who get sent in last, and he was like one of the tanks. So I think doesn't his army gets killed off, and I think he's now a mercenary or something like that, because he served his purpose for whatever battles he had to be in. And I think he was like a mercenary, which means he can now, he's up for hire. If people are willing to pay him a certain amount, he'll go and do their bidding for them or whatever, right? Or be a security guard or whatever, right? Whatever they assign him to. Um, so basically, then he gets found by, I forgot the guy's name in the short I mentioned. He gets found by Griffith, and then that's when the actual story begins. So his whole backstory is that he's only seen war, violence, and bloodshed, and it's he was born into that. Everybody in that time frame was born into that, who was living in that area. If they're a man, they're gonna probably be enlisted in the army and train and go out to fight and probably die. And the ones who are more genetically gifted or trained the hardest and could perform at a higher level, those are the only people who pretty much survive those times, regardless of what their rank was, unless they're in a royal family where they don't have to go see battle, right? So what happens is he's by nature going to be an intense person. This because he grew up in that, and whether people wanted to be in that or not, like they're going to have to build some type of intensity, literally, to have to deal with that. Where that's all they see is that they know they could probably die tomorrow and they have to keep whatever, because they don't have any choice. So what happens is with him. So I see the way I see him, he's like the poster boy for like intense, go hard, slug it out, type of characters. Where that's the only thing that really defines him. Like, I don't remember him having much of a personality, except like he could be very blunt and straightforward. Maybe there's characters who didn't like, for example, when he meets like the female character who he had a romantic relationship with. I don't think she liked his bluntness too much, but at the same time, it's like he's being honest and coming from an honest place. So I know there's some of that or whatever, but it all feeds into the fact that he's just intense. He reminds me of like people who are very, very dedicated to being good at something and putting time and energy into it to continue getting better at it, whether it was like a natural talent of theirs or not. And you just, if you ever go see them do the thing, like, you're kind of like, it's very inspiring and very like, you enjoy seeing it. Like, I remember I've mentioned people like this on streams, gaming streams or whatever. I see people who are very, very good at the game. I don't know if they play a lot, but they have put in a lot of years and made a lot of effort, and it's very entertaining to watch them perform. And they just have a very natural go hard or go home. Maybe it's because of the level that they play at, or maybe that's just you see their personality coming out in the way they do it. But like, it's inspiring to see or whatever. You see them go super hard and win, or you might see them lose, but for them to lose, they probably have to be up against somebody who's like a monster at what they're doing or whatever. And that person would just take the loss and just keep going. They just get back up and keep going, basically. And that's kind of like what Guts is, and literally his name, Guts used to mean like it's probably still means this, but people don't use this as a slang term anymore. But like, so for example, when you see somebody who fights hard in combat or whatever, they would call it, this person has a lot of heart, right? They say, oh, like, so, and that usually gets used. It doesn't always have to mean this, but it usually gets used in an example where, let's say you see a person who's not experienced at fighting going up against somebody who's very experienced, and you see the non-experienced person get beat up badly, and they can just keep getting back up. When most people would have quit, and most people should quit because like what happens is like when someone's getting beat badly by someone who knows what they're doing, like that person could be losing years off their life. They could be losing their health. They could probably need to go like get surgery and probably have severe injuries depending on how they're getting hit or harmed or whatever. So what will happen is you hear people use the term, this person has a lot of heart, because you see them get back up despite how much like they're facing, right? And keep going as if like they're willing to like put their life on the line to actually make it. So that's called heart, but that used to be called like guts. Like I grew up in the 90s, that people would say, oh, you, or some people would say, for example, oh, you had the balls to do something, but they could also say you have the guts to do something. The guts means like bravery. It literally means like the way he actually would act or whatever, or the way that he's willing to go out hard swinging and just to try and achieve whatever it is he's trying to do, right? So and then what happens is, so that's his personality is coming from, he's naturally actually going to be intense, and then he's also, that's what he's surrounded by throughout the entire show, and he's born into that. So with him, because it's coming from more of it's coming from a genuine place, and it's not really anything shaping that except like the way he was nurtured and raised, right? And the environment he's in. Besides the fact that I think he was, if he wasn't born in a war zone, he'd naturally be like an intense person. Maybe he'd be a martial artist and then also still, have a job or go after entrepreneurship or whatever, but like he'd have a warrior spirit. That's naturally who he would be. Now, in this, like I was saying, in the show, there's every man had to enlist in the army if they were born in the areas of where the show took place or whatever, because there was constant battle going on. So, but what happens is, not that doesn't mean every single man is a warrior spirit. That's an obligation for men, but that's not like, because if a draft happens or if they're needed to enforce the will of the leader or king of the area that they live in, like they literally need men to, whether the guy is gonna actually go serve a purpose or just die immediately, they need literally men as meat shields. That's unfortunately how war works, is that they need pawns to enforce their will. But what happens is, he was naturally going to be like that. So that's why you'd even see him smirking, or you'd see that he's not really like, it's not that he's angry, it's not that he's depressed, it's not that, like, for example, Vegeta is angry. Look, when he looks angry, it's because of his arrogance, and he has a bad attitude, and he has his own life experiences that also are the reason why he looks like that. When you see Goku look angry, it's because somebody like hurt his friend, or somebody threatened to destroy the world, and he wants to save the planet, and he just wanted to have, some alien came to invade the planet and destroy the planet, and he didn't want them to do that. He just wanted to fight them because they were strong, but he doesn't like that now they're taking it too far or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or Trunks, like I was saying when I sketched him, when I was talking about his intensity or his anger, or when you see the look on his face, is coming from like the life experience he had, that he came from the future to warn everybody about the horrific future that he's living in. So he came and traveled back on a time machine to try and tell them to start training in advance so that they could prevent that happening or whatever, because it was he was living in a horrific experience, which I won't have to re-explain, but basically that's where his face is coming from. Guts is literally coming from, he's just, his face would probably look like that even if there wasn't a war going on. He'd have like the serious look on his face and probably be smiling, and he's probably just gonna go hard at whatever he does, right? Naturally. That's without even getting into like the rest of the story. Like for example, when he gets recruited by Griffith, and Griffith has to win over his trust because he's a mercenary and he's now lost us at a certain point after he had finished whatever battle, and I forget the exact details. So like not having the details kind of keeps me from being able to give an accurate recall of the story. But he ended up going through some stuff that actually would have been a very good reason for him to actually be serious from an actual dark place or whatever. But I don't think he was like that yet. Yeah, he's seen people die. He probably maybe didn't want to kill people, but that's just the nature of war. But I don't think that that's where his intensity came from. He was just naturally gonna go hard at whatever. But later on in the story, when he gets won over by the leader of a small militia, who I think they were mercenaries as well. It was a group of mercenaries who was led by a guy who was a very high level swordsman, and they end up finding out over time that this guy is at a high level. He is somebody who could lead them, who they could look up to, and he's actually at a level of swordsmanship that I think he was on par or past Guts a little bit. Which is how he was able to win Guts' trust over, is that he dueled Guts and he beat Guts. So he said if I can defeat you, I want you to serve under me or whatever. And he had a good eye for finding people who were good swordsmen who were probably mercenaries and had nowhere to go, and he just recruited them to work for him, right? But what happens is he has his own thing going on where he had dark secrets he didn't tell anybody about. So like for example, he sold his soul to I forget the exact details, but like this world also has mysticism in it. So like for example, there's gods or deities or devils or whatever you want to call it, who he sold his soul to one of them, and then what happens is he's on a timeline where he's going to become one of those beings or gods or deities or whatever in a different realm, but he has to go through a certain amount of time in a specific timeline, and he also was a traitor to all of them, because what happens is he gives these people a place to stay and a place to someone to look up to and someone to lead them, but he's actually really, from what I remember, or from what I remember, the understanding of it was he was going to sacrifice his whole small militia to become one of those guys. So he had to go through an entire timeline where then they went and won more battles, and they traveled around, and he was doing some questionable stuff, like he was selling his body as well, but nobody knew about that or whatever. He was doing things to try and get by, and then when time was up, what happens is he and his small militia get sent to like he had to go through what would seem like an entire lifeline. Like, wasn't it by the time they got sent to that other place, he was like chained up and I think, was he starved to death or something like that? So he was a prisoner, and he was pretty much at the end of his life, and then he was pretty much have already supposed to have died, and then they end up getting sent to a different dimension where basically he would have to have his soldiers fight these literal gods who there's no way to defeat them. So they go to they pretty much go to hell, have to fight demons. They all get slaughtered off and killed, and then he basically, because he sacrificed all of them, he was now able to become like a god or whatever. So that type of experience, that if anything, if that had happened before the story started, that would literally probably you'd probably see that he's like sad or angry or depressed. That's where you see that like his intensity is coming from. But what happens is that didn't happen yet, so like he looks like he's smiling or whatever, right? So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Now, I didn't watch the show after that, so any next season of the show, if it was actually canon to those events, if I'm drawing a picture of Guts from after those events, I don't remember if the author did this or the illustrator did this, but if they're drawing how he looks, is probably coming from a different place. So it's not just genuine, like genuinely just an intense person who's happy to go after the challenge. Is probably a person who has now experienced something catastrophic and dark, and it's probably had some type of emotional toll on them. And then that's where you see, like, it could be things in the eyebrows. It could be things in like the way his eyes look. So like his eyelids, does he look like he's tired or dreary? Maybe he's not smiling as much or whatever. Like I'm just imagining from what I can remember, that's how he'd look after some type of events like that. So those are just things to keep in mind, basically, right? Based on where his personality is coming from. So basically, I'm starting with the head shape and facial structure. At this stage, I'm trying to keep everything balanced and symmetrical. The expression is the most important part of the drawing. I'm focusing on eyes, eyebrows, and grin because they help communicate the character's personality. Next, I'm building the hair silhouette. I'm working with larger shapes first because refining smaller details. Now I'm sketching the cloak and neck area, even though the face is the focal point. The clothing helps frame the character. Okay, let me just see where. Okay, yeah. Basically, overall, I'm happy with how the sketch turned out. The expression was the strongest part of the drawing and really helped me bring the character to life. Obviously, excuse me, it's just a mugshot, basically. Not even really his shoulders. He's wearing like his cape or his cape over his armor. So really, you're only seeing the face anatomy and his hair. Everything else is very. It's not the focal point of the photo. So I had to make sure the expression was correct. Obviously, that means drawing it correctly from the reference. But like I said, keeping in mind the place that this character's facial expression is coming from, if you're actually aware, that can help. Like I was saying, people even trying to make iconic or very viral art, if if they just keep in mind where a character's appearance is coming from, like what happened to them that caused them to have their personality to the point where when you see them, their face looking like that, was there something that caused it, or was there some sort of backstory or things that they went through that have to do with why they would even have that expression, or if they have that expression regardless, would those things affect it? Because then, when we're talking about getting into further details after you build a structure, those further details will help you actually bring out those emotions more. And the funny thing is, what is art? There, people are going to define it as so many different things, but a very common definition is you can use your art to inspire emotions in people who are seeing it, and people feeling the emotions, even if it's just nostalgia or relatability because they've actually watched a show or they went through something the character went through. People is simply being able to relate to the character in some type of way like that is literally what will cause people to, between them scrolling past it and or clicking the like and leaving a comment or saving it or reposting it, basically, right? Because seeing a character that's drawn well can definitely bring that, but also seeing a character that actually have brought out the emotion in them to even want to even spend more time looking at it, that actually does it as well, and that even does it more, and that's even why people even will. So another reason why people even, if you're like literally getting to the realm of selling your art, whether that's music, whether that's actually drawing or whatever, um like literally people feeling something will cause them to pay money, literally. And then that's also why niches exist, because the niche is literally a specific category of emotions or things that it triggers in the people who actually like that niche. So really all you have to do is figure out, like, basically just figure out what your niche is if you want to do that, or you get good at general stuff, then you figure it out what you excel at more. And then if you could figure out how to communicate those things to the people in that niche, however you're going to do it in your art, then you're probably going to succeed better, which is why I actually, it's why I keep bringing up like where the emotions might come from. Like yes, people can buy something because it's good, but they're also gonna buy something because like you trigger something in them when they seen it that cause them to follow through. And like people are actually emotional buyers or necessity buyers, literally. So if you just understand that, and the part of the emotion is literally if you understood what the characters, what they went through in the show, and literally understood how to bring out that same vibe in a literally in an image. That could be like the difference between people literally buying it, for people who actually really like that series and can relate to it, right? Like people will like shows because of many different things, like even the artwork and the plot, but like people like the characters a ton to where the cosplay exists because people literally want to dress up as characters for events just out of respect for the idea of the character. So like that's just how important it is to like find ways to make those characters give off those vibes because people literally continue to buy that from these series because of specific characters. So then when the series wants to go drop video games or drop even clothing or drop merch or drop like comic books, people will want to go actually purchase those things because of literally the characters. And without having to actually manufacture merch, you can actually just do it with the art itself, basically, right? Which is why people even get like if you're actually gonna do commissions, they'll get commissions because you did a good job portraying the character for them, basically. And the angle of this channel wasn't, it's not like me telling you how to sell your art, but like I'm telling you like what to focus on. With I'm saying breakdowns on how to get better at it, and I'm giving tips on what to focus on, which can help you. To the point where selling's even an option, or there's people who pop up and say they want to buy something you made, even though you weren't selling it, and that's actually happened to me before. And I not even because I was trying to. It was more because I'm just putting in the repetitions and getting better, and maybe I'm accidentally portraying things, or maybe there's characters that are rarely drawn, and I drew a character that's rarely drawn, and somebody really appreciated that I drew that character because they're like they appreciate seeing more of that character being represented, right? Because they could relate to the character. But yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. And Guts is a very iconic character, and the series is very iconic to people who understand, who have watched the series. I'm pretty sure there's nobody who could say that they didn't like that series. They probably say it's up there with the top series they've ever seen, literally, if they've actually seen this before, right? But yeah, basically, the expression was the strongest part of the drawing, and I really helped, and it really helped bring the character to life, obviously. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.